Bismillahirrahmanirrahim wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Peace and love, everybody. It's Brother Ali. This is the Travelers Podcast. Thank you for being here. We got a really dope guest with us today. Marlon Craft is an MC, and he also is a musical director, executive producer. He's his own manager, just a really incredible person. And I met him about 5 years ago because me and Evidence made an album together called Secrets and Escapes. Didn't tell anybody we were making it, didn't have a pre-order, just came out of nowhere. We put it out on Halloween, which is Pharaoh Monch's birthday. Shout out to the beautiful and incredible and genius Pharaoh Monch. And Pharaoh Monch gave us a verse for the album. And so we put this album out with nobody even knowing that it was coming. It just showed up in people's Spotify or wherever you listen to, music. And our plan was to start going on tour and making videos and doing all kind of shows and all kind of things for it. And then the pandemic happened, so that didn't happen. But we got to do one of the runs, me and Ev on the West Coast. And so we got hit up by Dante Ross. Dante Ross, if you don't know that name, you should check out his memoir. It just came out this year. Dante Ross is one of the most respected and highly revered just figures in hip hop music. Definitely probably the white person in hip hop that I respect the most. And I don't say that to qualify it, but that's a rare air. There's a lot of people, especially in that generation, in this culture. And I have questions, and it was uncharted territory to a certain extent and things like that. But Dante Ross is somebody who's been at the epicenter of a lot of my favorite music and probably a lot of yours. He was involved with the Beastie Boys early on. He was involved with signing De La Soul. He was involved with, he didn't sign Tribe Called Quest, but he wanted to. He was really a part of making the Brand Nubian records and all the way up into the modern day, in modern times. He worked with Action Bronson, and right now he works with an amazing singer named C.S. Armstrong. C.S. Armstrong is also on that Secrets and Escapes album. But Dante Ross hit us up and he's like, yo, there's this young artist that I'm working with named Marlon Craft. And I want him to come and learn how to tour from seasoned veterans. We're going to go the independent route with him. We're not trying to get him signed, even though he's got it, And so we were like, yeah, anything for Dante Ross. And then we heard his music. We heard Marlon's music and it's like, oh, okay, he's dope. He's, pedigree MC. So yeah, sure. And we went out on the road and he was young and, but over the years, I got a chance to really see who he is and what he's about. He's somebody that is not afraid to talk about everything from white supremacy to his own mental health issues and things like that. But the really dope thing about him, to me personally, he's an incredible artist. Like, just go listen to his music. He's really, really dope, especially to be from the age group that he's from. Just a for real songwriter, and he is the executive producer of his own albums. And it's very rare, a lot of people can spit and he can really spit. Look at him on Sway and Funkmaster Flex and everything else. And it's another thing to be able to make songs. If you can actually create and craft songs, that's a whole other talent. And then if you can make albums, that's something that's really difficult to do. So you get somebody that can do all those things. Now you're starting to deal with some greatness. But he does all of those things as his own manager, his own executive producer. Really incredible. And, the Travelers Podcast is really about the reality that we're co-travelers in a journey of life. And so we need each other and we need to see our reflections in other people. We're really benefited very greatly from doing that because we can't see ourselves. We see everything, but we can't see ourselves. And so reflections are really important to get an idea, to help understand ourselves better. And Marlon is the one and only artist nowadays that I would look at and be like, what would it look like for me to come out in this time? Like, how would I navigate? How would I carry it? He's the closest person to that for me. And, he just does it with a lot of depth and a lot of beauty and a certain degree of just class and dignity. I always look at white artists and like, what are you bringing to this? Because how much of yourself do you bring to this culture? because that says a lot about the way that you understand and appreciate and respect the culture. If this art form to you is the medium through which you explore and learn about life and about truth and about yourself, and you bring your entire self, and the way that you show up is, with how whatever you have to offer, you're pouring into this music. That's something that I really respect, and that's something I really resonate with. So it's really beautiful to be able to sit down and talk to Marlon. Um, yeah, you're in for a treat. If you haven't heard his music, do yourself a favor and go and check him out. We're brought to you as always by the Zakat Foundation. Zakat Foundation is they've been supporting this show from the very, very beginning. They do incredible work all over the world. More about them in a minute. And we are brought to you also by BetterHelp. There was some misinformation that was spread that BetterHelp was only helping one side of the conflict in Palestine, and the reality is that they're helping both sides. They're helping people in general that are being affected by just the nightmare and atrocities that are happening in the Middle East. And so they put out a statement to that effect. We reached out to them directly with regard to our partnership, and they are, in fact, helping anyone that's involved in that conflict that is needing their help. So we're rocking with BetterHelp. We're still rocking with them and grateful to do that. Hope you enjoy this episode of the Travelers Podcast with Marlon Craft. Okay, official Coogee, or is this like the?
Come on, baby. This is vintage
I
right
already know.
here, man.
Man, forgive me for asking, brother. I should have known.
I'm deep in the game. I'm on eBay with it, I'm deep in the collection with it.
I saw you on. I saw you shopping in Europe.
Yeah, man. That's my rapper splurge is just like I've like started collecting these like vintage Pele Peles and like Jeff Hamilton, Jan and the Coogis, and I'm just like, oh man. It's something about like it's like what my OGs wore growing up in New York. So it's like have a little bit of disposable income and I'm like, I want those.
Yeah, man.
And then I kind of got into it because it's like they kind of tell a story, you know what I mean? So
Yeah, and you wear them well too. Like not everybody can pull that stuff off without it looking like, you know what I mean? Like you could be standing at the same stop as like a Brooklyn hipster, ironically wearing the same thing, and I feel like anybody would know the difference. Like he means it and knows what that means. That dude just saw something. He caught a TikTok trend or something.
that means a lot. Thank you. I appreciate that, man, because I'm it's like that now in New York, man, because it's very weird. Like even places that I used to frequent as a kid, like I used to be uptown in Harlem a lot.
Hmm.
And I would be like the only white kid up there, and there was a sense of purpose. It was like, all right, we're looking at you crazy, but there must be a reason you up here. You know what I mean? Like, and now it's like it's so gentrified in so many places in New York, and um, and now I get the certain looks that I understand because I feel the same way, honestly. But it's like I can't wear like a shirt that was like, nah, I've been up here since I was 11. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so the differentiation between the Brooklyn hipster and myself is like a perpetual struggle. I appreciate that.
You know what's a trip for me with the whole gentrified thing is like, so when you grow up being the only white person in a place, like you said, like it's pretty actually like easy to communicate. I know why I'm here. I know what the rules are. I know what I can do and not do. I know where I can be and not be. And then when the gentrification thing happens, not only do you see it like destroying the culture because you knew you were there before, but then also the whole safety thing changes a lot because now it's not clear who's food, who's here for a reason, who's a victim, you know what I mean? It's like it's there's a like I have a really weird feeling like that in a lot of places like Oakland and you know what I'm saying in Harlem too. Like my wife is from the Bronx, and so I spent a lot of time in the Bronx and Harlem. And the Bronx is not gentrified yet, so there's still that. But yeah, and Oakland both feel really like, man, I used to feel like I knew how to communicate why my being here a lot more clearly than I can now.
Man, yeah, it's so true. I've been having a lot of experiences with that just this week, to be honest. It's funny to be talking about it off the bat because you made the point about the safety. It's funny, like people will say about certain neighborhoods, even, Hell's Kitchen, where I'm from, it's like, oh, it's so much safer now than it was. And I always beg the question of like, safer for who?
Right.
Like safer for you, like the average person with no cultural context and like from not from here looking to like extract. But it's like I was always pretty safe here because I probably knew whoever would be doing the robbing. You know, not that that makes it okay, but it's just the dynamics are more nuanced, I think, and complex than people understand. And yeah, I agree. Like it's hard now. How do you communicate that? And then what I've been thinking about this week is what's the reason for me feeling so strongly the desire to communicate?
Mm-hmm.
No, no, this is who I am. I've been here. I've been a part of this, and I've been arriving at that. Like, I don't feel necessarily like it's about validation. I think it's just more about wanting to be seen as you are, in this genuine way that I feel like we all do as people, but particularly us as artists. It's like you want to be seen as you are, and it's always been tough for me to be seen as I am because of the different contexts and whatever. But now with the gentrification element, it's like I'm coming to these sombering realizations of like, damn, I'm never going to be seen as I am, uh, generally, and that's kind of sad. I kind of grieve that a little bit.
But I feel like that's a I don't know an artist that doesn't feel that way. I don't know a real genuine artist who doesn't feel like, man, I'm trying to just be understood and to be validated for what I am. You know what I mean? That's like the whole thing about like there's no clearer sign that like if I get good enough at something that I stand up in a room and everyone looks at me and claps for me, like that's the clearest symbol that that like yeah, everybody in here agrees that I'm okay, you know? And for artists it's like every single one I know that's successful has that struggle somewhere in the path to becoming dope.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that's what I've been realizing, and just learning, like unpacking it and learning about myself, realizing, oh, that's a big impetus for why you even do what you do and why you are where you are is that drive to be seen as you are and acknowledged. And my youth and upbringing and just general context was always struggling to be seen as I was and figuring out where I fit in. And uh, but I've been realizing too, I guess that maybe I thought somewhere like if I get big enough or famous enough or successful enough with my voice and with my expression that I'll have beat the game and
Hmm.
I will be seen as I am
Right.
generally by people, whatever. And I'm realizing now that I don't think that's true. Like that, I don't think that's going to be true. I could get really huge and a lot of notoriety and still be misinterpreted widely. Maybe even more likely in that scenario.
Yeah, because people who don't know your work know who you are. You know what I'm saying? Like there are people that if you look at like, Hove and Dave Chappelle and like some of the most famous people on earth that still come from, that outside the dominant culture. So like we operate in a culturally black space and it makes sense because of the way that we were raised and like the way we grew up. But you look at people like these greats that are in like black culture and so many people know who they are who have no context for who they are. And I from the people that I've been around that are like that, I don't think they feel more understood at some point. Like just the power of being able to throw that weight around or to leverage that fame or that money to do the things that they want to do. It's like after a while I think people stop caring about wanting to be understood and just like the power to be able to actually impact whatever I can touch is just going to have to make up for that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, these are like my coming of age realizations, I guess, in this phase of and just a recalibration of what's important too.
Hmm.
You realize that there are people that see me as I am, And I just need to have even more gratitude for those people, those relationships, and foster them and tend to them, as opposed to, you know, looking for more and more and more. If other relationships like that throughout the course of my life present themselves, and that's great. But trying to just appreciate the people that do see me. It's funny. It's like I don't make a lot of new friends, and I realize that too in thinking about it because most of the people that I spend most of my time with or that know me really well, with a few exceptions, but most of them known me since I was a kid. Like so they understand my context,
Right.
and I'm not in a perpetual state of having to like perform like who I am to whoever I'm around, like making sure everyone gets it.
Hmm.
Um, so, and I'm realizing too that I think I need to just let go of that. Like that's probably the journey is like completely letting go of that and just being cool with like being misinterpreted all the time, you know?
It's a trip. Like one of the things that I really love is being able to just like see reflections of ourselves in other people. And just from knowing you and observing you, I'm like, man, I always wonder what would it be like if me and some of my like cohort had come along in this time. You know what I mean? And watching you, I'm like, yeah, go ahead, man, get over. Like, you know what I mean? Like, try to see like what it looks like. And I just so there's some certain things that I wonder about the generation. It's not like a full generation gap, maybe, but just the time, the changing times. And one of the things that I wonder about is that for me, when I came along, I was like touring in two spaces. There were two kind of like groups of people. So one was like very like hardcore conscious 5%er, brand Nubian and Public Enemy and like that type of thing. So those guys embraced me. They took me on tour, and I could go out and earn it with their fan base every day. But I had to really earn it within seconds, like from seconds of people go on to see Rakim, and then they hear that there's some person they never heard of called Brother Ali, and then it's like Brother Ali, and then this walks out. It's like, man, you better fix this immediately. Um, but then the other one was like Atmosphere, the underground white thing that existed. And so that was they're like rather than having to earn it, like they were like tackling me to like be like you're the guy. And then once I got in there and I got some space and started sharing my views about the world because of the way that I was raised and because of like how I got good making this kind of music, people felt like a lot of the fans felt like I betrayed them. It was like, we're here because we're white and we like to see ourselves on stage. And the second you start talking a certain way or you start displaying something that like breaks that agreement that we were projecting on you, then they're really upset. And so I just wonder like what that's like. How does that relate to your own journey? Because you have a lot of music that's very open and it's very vulnerable, and you got that beautiful hair, and you know what I'm saying. But you also have some like you are very clear and specific and articulate. Like for you to make songs going at white supremacy's neck is not like it's not like he had to go read a bunch of books and confer with a bunch of like man, this is where he's at already. And so I just wonder like what has that part of the journey been like for you?
Man, it's funny because when we first met and I was on the tour, man, I have none of this hair.
Right, right. That's
those was
true.
the pre-hair days. I'm starting to crack the code on the aesthetic of it, but yeah, it's I relate a lot to the first part of having to really earn it,
Hmm.
having to prove it over and over again, um, because of how I come out and how I looked, and I was kind of used to that from my childhood with basketball. I was a
Right.
basketball player, and
Yeah.
I was always the only white kid, and it was the same type of thing. It was like you got to prove it. And you know, it's always been interesting to observe who uh, I get like a front row seat to everybody's agendas because I kind of like the weirdness of me at in rap, looking how I looked, especially in the beginning. I wasn't like now I'm like kind of figuring out how to tell my story aesthetically, the Coogis and the jackets and the jerseys and stuff and the hair, and it's more of like palatable. But
Hmm.
in the beginning, it was very like I hadn't figured out my style. I had no money to like I was wearing t-shirts that was too small for me. My mom was cutting my hair. It was like I was like this skinny dude that was just like, yo, what is this? So quickly I got to see who was like, oh, we just care about the art form. We care about the music. We care about the rapping. We care about that. Who was like, we care about seeing something that we can potentially package and sell. Who was like, I might be open to this, but I'm not because my insecurities won't allow me to, because I'm not sure if my friend group, my community, my whatever will accept this.
Mm-hmm.
So it's made me like acutely aware of everyone's sort of emotional agenda that they're projecting onto the rap game and how they consume their artists.
Mm-hmm.
And the irony is with the white fan thing, I've never really I think I'd be a lot bigger if I like had that problem because of the type of music that I feel like I made and the things that I've spoken to. I've never I've never had the issue of like, man, I have so many just like white boy fans that are here because I'm white. Like I just it was man, it's hard to articulate. It's just like I think the hardest part is those are the opportunities that present themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Those are sometimes the people that come and say, like, hey, I want to co-sign you. Those are like when I would go into meetings and I would talk about how I want to pave my career and trying to find people to work with,
Mm-hmm.
the names they would compare me to.
Right.
Just would have nothing to do with where I'm coming from culturally or
Right.
even the music that I'm making.
Yes.
You know what I'm
Yeah, yeah,
saying?
yeah, yeah.
And it's like, are you listening to the songs? Because they don't sound anything like this dude. So, yeah, it's just been a lot of like convolution and confusion, and I relate a lot to that side of it.
Yeah. There's always our whole foundation of music. They're like, these are the people that form our relationship with music, like what music is to us, and then what hip hop is to us. And that usually happens but then once we start our career, there's somebody that we usually look up to, and they might not be a whole generation before, but they might just be a little bit. And I've always felt like I could really see a lot of like similarity with J. Cole. Like if I was gonna put you on, if me just based on the way you represent yourself, the way that your music is, like I would be like that guy should be on tour with J. Cole. Not that you sound like him or not that, but it just feels like there's a like the place that you're coming from, and then there's the whole basketball thing, and
Right, right.
but that's always been is he one of your big influences, and then who are the people that come before that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like J. Cole, especially when I was coming up,
Yeah.
was and that's the funny part about it, right? It's like that's the no-brainer comparison to me, right?
Yeah.
Like I agree with you, right? It's
Okay.
like if you're not just thinking like
I'm happy
beyond
because sometimes
optically,
you could
like
say like who you would compare an artist to, and it can really hurt. So I'm glad that that's
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Nah, I mean, obviously there's a million reasons that I'm different or not. But if I was like an A&R, right, and
Yeah.
like when I was coming into the game, I would be like, this guy's like J. Cole. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? That's what it is. So, but of course, like only very rarely and by people that I respect and that have removed the bullshit and get it has that comparison been made. Usually it was like dudes was like, yo, you should I don't want to say names and like insult people, but dudes was
Right.
like, when I first came in, they're like comparing me to like these like frat rap college white boy dudes that I'm just like, what are you talking about? Like,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Like what? Um, so uh yeah, that he was a big influence for me. Kendrick is probably my biggest influence, especially with where I'm going with the music and want
I
to take
I
it
could hear that
musically.
now too. Yeah, like with there's something
Mm.
about and again, you don't sound like either of them. I don't think anybody would be like, yeah, this guy sounds like these dudes. But when you say that, like I feel like I can hear on the last couple projects, like the way you're playing with your voice now and the way you're playing with your cadence is more. There's a lot more playfulness. There's a lot more musicality. That yeah, I can definitely hear the Kendrick thing too.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it, and yeah, I mean, the funny part about it is too, it might come up of. the people that gravitated toward me were sort of this underground, a lot of older heads, like boom bap, sort of side of the culture, right? But the truth is, bro, I grew up in New York in the LimeWire era in like the 2000s. Like I was listening to like 50 Cent, Dipset, and G Unit, and like Cassidy, and like, and so that was weird too because it's like I was rapping on all these old school beats because I liked them, but a lot of the old school beats that I was rapping on, it was like I knew them from freestyles that my favorite rappers had done in the mixtape era almost before I knew them from the classic 90s shit that they're from.
Right.
So that's a lot, influenced my style a lot too, just in terms of not subject matter necessarily, but the tonality of like the aggression sometimes, the that with which it's delivered. Because I was just listening to gangster shit. I was watching Smack DVD and dudes like battling, like I was really just out in New York. So it's always been an amalgamation of like a lot of different influences. But I had a picture of Kendrick and Cole up in my room, like as college kids, like that. Those guys were to me kind of like the Holy Grail. And then Joey Badass came along and started really having his moment, and that kind of was showing me like, oh, this type of stuff has a space. Again, now it feels like in a more contemporary space, and that was very influential. And then Chance got really big when I was starting out, and seeing him with a band a few times made me really be like, man, this hip hop with a band thing, like that's where it's at for me. So, and then of course, like Nas, Jay, classic, timeless stuff, big New York stuff that's just forever relevant. But yeah, so many different influences, man.
Yeah. And then in terms of music, like I know, like I see your family is just always really part of your whole presentation. Like it just, you can just really feel like this is a guy that was raised very well, and your family is like really present. It's funny too, like whenever I see your dad, I'm like, dude, man, you look so much like your dad. Or there's just something not it's similar to the Cole thing where like even if you don't, maybe you don't look like him, but there's something about the way that he carries himself. And then I remember hearing you, I was thinking like, man, this guy carries himself like his dad. Like you had an actual man. Like first of all, I'm like, this guy had a dad. That's dope. but but then I think you said something in oh man, I think it was the one that came out in 2022. Like my dad told me, watch your posture, like be mindful of your posture
Yeah,
or something
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
So how
Pops always said, "Watch your posture."
yeah,
Yeah.
how much does their musical influence show up in your life too?
It's funny, man, because my dad's a jazz percussionist, but like he never put music on me at all.
Mm.
Like he never, like he played jazz in the house all the time. We got vibes in my living room. He's always playing the vibes and playing stuff. But I didn't really like. I'm more of like a Naima type of jazz fan, like the slow, emotional stuff. And he would always listen to like the frenetic, wild stuff. And I never was like, I was just on my hip hop shit, and he never pressured me in terms of like making a taking like piano lessons. He just didn't really push it on me. So I think I was just like kind of absorbing it and taking it in without really realizing it. And then my mom was like, she played me like the Mamas and the Papas and shit like that, and like Alanis Morissette, and like, she's like different like shit like that. That was like, so I now it's so obvious the music that I like and the hip hop I gravitate to and the instrumentation and doing things live with a band and all the jazzy shit that I love. But it's funny because when I was growing up, it didn't feel like that was happening at all, like I was being influenced at all.
Were your parents from like what part are they from the city too? And like what part of the city or what where they grow up?
My pops is from New York, from the Upper West Side, born and raised in New York City. And then my mom is from Miami. She was from Miami and then she moved to Detroit, like outside Detroit when she was in high school.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, my mom's like family is pretty conservative. It's like she was like the rogue like person who's like, I'm gonna go to New York and do theater. I'm out. Fuck this shit.
Mm.
Um, and but my pop side of the family, my grandparents are directors, um, and like my uncle is like an opera pianist and stuff. So it's like very artsy,
Hmm.
artsy fan.
Yeah. Do they have an understanding, like, do they have an understanding because of that for what the life of an artist is and the opportunities to make a living? Like, a lot of people really struggle with their parents where when they say I'm going to be an artist for a living. It's like, well, unless you get a record deal or unless you teach at Juilliard or something, that's just not happening. But people that know what it is to be a working musician.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the beautiful poetic part about my story, So my dad, is a jazz percussionist, he's a musician. He's a musical director for this modern dance company. He was like touring the world and working and stuff. But, he's a musician, so it was inconsistent. Like it's up and down. And, long story short, my mom kind of was like, we needed to be consistent and we need you around. And so he kind of gave the music up, went back to school, um, got a degree in physical therapy, and then he's been using it to do um, this, doing like medical paralegal work, all this different stuff. So the thing is, he kind of gave up his musical pursuits to be a father to me and really be around and chose that stability and to make sure that the family was together and that he was there. And so now, me having found my way to music and now having more success as a musician than he ever had and reaching financial independence just as a doing music um is so fulfilling for both of us, I think, because um it's like he didn't give it up in vain, and now through me he gets to kind of live out some of that stuff. He comes to the shows and I'll be like coming over playing him mixes, asking for his opinion on shit, and so yeah, it's that's a real special part of the story for me.
Do you always executive produce your projects? Like, do you have a producer that you're working with? Because, like, it's one thing for an artist to be able to figure out how to spit bars. It's another thing to be able to learn to make songs. It's another thing to be able to learn how to make an album that has a cohesive sound, that's sequenced well, that's presented well, that tells a story, that's a good like listening experience. Like, each one of those is its own thing, and it's very rare to have all that. And all of your projects, going back to the earliest joints, like, they really have this kind of like seasoned cohesion to them that's really rare. And it gives me the suspicion that that's you having that vision and executing it. So I mean, do you executive produce your own projects? Did you learn that from somebody? How did you develop that?
Man, yeah, no, thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, no, it's all been me, man. Like I executive produce everything, I conceptualize everything, um, everything I've ever done. I've never had like an A&R. I've never had an EP. It's I I'm not one to. I think we live in this era of I'm not one to like project certain accolade, like there's a style of cat in my generation that's very much like here's all the things that I do and that I've done, and everyone's like, yeah, like that's right, own that, stand on that. And I think there's a healthy version of that, but too often for me it just dips into like sort of the like death of humility
Hmm.
that we've seen kind of in this time and generation. So I don't often take credit for like, I'm really directing and co-directing all my videos. Like I'm really, writing treatments. I'm coming up with everything. I'm aggregating the producers. I'm in every session. I'm producing, I don't play the instruments, but like capital P, like produce, like I'm arranging. I've sat and done arrangements, like comping different instruments and stuff like that. So I'm super hands-on with everything. And honestly, it's all just come from trial and error and practice and just obsession. I was so obsessed with the artists that I loved that I felt like put cohesive projects together. And I felt like I believed it was them. Whether or not, I don't know if that was always true, but it just felt like if their name was on it, it was their album, it was their project, and I just really loved that aspect of it. So that's always been me. And now even I'm getting better at, I have certain producers that are so incredible musicians that I trust. I'm getting better with being a better leader in the sense of like being hands off more often.
Mm.
letting someone arrive at an idea because I trust their artistry and knowing that I can shift it back or do whatever I have to do to make sure it stays on track with my vision, but allowing them that space. Because yeah, man, I'm controlling to maybe even a fault sometimes, but yeah, it's definitely all just been me.
Been independent since day one and always talking about it. I really believe in it. And especially in these times when, I mean, people's opinions and the way that we read and understand and sit with the things that happen in the world. I mean, if you share an opposite opinion in any way, you know, um, it could really mean that people will fire you from your job. It could really mean that people won't work with you, in the industry. It's a very, very real thing. Like I've got some stuff on the table that I would like to do. And I don't know if I know actually that I don't have the same perspective, opinions, um, as the people that I'm hoping to do these business things with. And I don't know if if the fact that I have expressed what feels very, very true to me, um, I don't know if that's gonna close some doors for me, you know? But the reason that I do what I do is not because of the opportunities that I want. The reason I do what I do is because I want the freedom to explore what's going on in me and what's going on in the world, and to see it with my heart and my lens and my perspective, and then to share that with the people that feel like listening to it, whether it's in music or podcasting or learning series or the speeches and lectures that I do, all of that stuff. And so I don't have a boss other than the people that support me. And those are the people that we call the caravan. If you go to brotherali.com in the join section or brotherali.com/join, you'll see that we have a caravan there, and you can get in at different levels. And it basically gives you a chance to support directly the work that we're doing here, the positions that we take, the stances that we make, the commitment that we have to pouring out our hearts. Like, this is what we do here. And, these are not stories and these are not perspectives that start out true and then we embellish them a little bit for artistic license. What we give you here is true. It's real. It's not even always right and exact and correct and proper and, you know, but we give you the truth here from our hearts, and we know that people listen with their hearts. So if you go to the caravan, you'll hear all kind of unreleased, rare, exclusive music, all kind of video content and talks and all kind of things that we've done, and we add to it all the time. They're also in that upper tier of trailblazers. We have a Slack channel where we communicate with each other on a daily basis. It's limited, it's exclusive because of the fact we want to keep it small and intimate, because we really share our lives there. I mean, there are people in that group that, we've been at this for over a year now with the people that have been rocking with it since day one. And I mean, we've seen big changes in each other's lives, and we've been part of each other's lives. And these are people that would not know each other. Like, I'm very blessed to represent and speak to and speak from the perspective of multiple communities that do not overlap in their day-to-day lives. And so, but my listeners do when they come around here. And that means a lot to me. And we learn how to express ourselves and explore what's going on, while still giving each other space to have their thing and to have their perspective and to live life the way they do and to identify their way, all of that. It's a very, very beautiful thing. And I've been expanded by it. And it's, it's something that I've had in my professional life since the beginning for 20 years now. And being able to bring it into this space and share it with you all, it's been really, really tremendous. So if you go to brotherali.com, /join, or go to brotherali.com and hit the join section, you'll be able to get down with the caravan, support the movement, support the music, and really join a community of people that are looking to live life together. I can produce, I can make beats, I can arrange, I can do all of that stuff. But then the second I send it to like somebody to do something visual, I don't know how to communicate. I don't know how to communicate it to somebody else. And I find myself like catching, like stopping myself before pulling the trigger, or like really, fighting hard for a vision to get it exactly where I want it to be. Was that something that you just developed it by always being in that position?
Yeah, exactly. Like that's so hard. The visual aspect is so hard,
Mm,
and I've like tried and failed in early days. Like there's videos that I made that just look so stupid, and like looking back on, or I think it's interesting because in my generation, it was like things became accessible to do
right.
because of technology.
Yeah.
Like we could throw together little videos. We could like I could do the freestyle videos in my room. We could do the songs and just upload them. I could like do a shitty little mixing garage band myself and just like whatever. So whenever I got anywhere, like an opportunity where someone was trying to like tell me how to do something or tell me about my art, I was really closed off and kind of was like, well, the only reason I even got here in the first place to talk to you is by trusting my own intuition and my own taste and my own vision. So I'm not about to start now like letting you bleed into this thing that I hold sacred. It's kind of like if anything, wasn't collaborative enough, you know?
Hmm.
Um, but I think it's like a generational thing because we almost have to develop all those skills um, to do it on our own in order to achieve any sort of fan base. Whereas I feel like in the past, it probably was like when you get your first shot, it's someone saying like, "All right, we're gonna press some records for you, but here's your A&R, here's your label rep, like here's whatever." Everyone's got their input,
Yeah.
and et cetera, type shit.
Yeah. Because when we first met you, we met you through Dante Ross. And I
Yeah,
just saw Dante recently, and I was telling him like, yeah, I've been talking to Marlon, and it's deep because, he comes from that time when, when an artist would come along and they had a lot of talent, but they had zero access to anything, so they didn't know. Like they would bring in records and be like, I want to rap on this music with these drums, and then the engineer for the session or the A&R, like a lot of times Dante became an A&R or became a producer just by being an A&R in the studio with people and being like, this engineer doesn't know how to do it. I'm gonna just figure out how to loop these things up and make this stuff. So when I mentioned that to him, I was talking to you. He's like, "Man, me and Marlon don't work together in that role anymore." And he's like, and the reason is because this generation came up doing everything themselves. And so on the one hand, he's like, they're all superheroes, you know what I mean? But on the other one, it is harder to get that kind of like that group dynamic thing happening. But it sounds like you're saying that you have like a team of people that you do work with, though.
yeah. I mean, yeah, that it's so true. Like it's. And Dante, it's funny too, because Dante, even on our prior conversation, how we started talking about like being seen, that was one of the things about that relationship that was really special to me was like he was one of the few people in the world that had a context for me that I didn't have to explain, understand,
Right.
being from New York
Yes.
and being him. You know what I mean? And so it was so special and validating to me in that time. But it was true. It was like I had so much context. I had context overload for like what I felt was working for me and was going to work for me and made sense to me. And with Dante and I, it was like it was never about music. Like we never had any disagreement about any type of music,
Mm.
really. Like I cherish those times so much. Those car rides on that tour, bro, and what the music he was putting me on to, and we're in there talking about like mixes on D'Angelo albums and stuff, and how they're like he's a savant, and he taught me so much and about the game as well. But that was also part of it too. It's funny like because it's on both sides of the business. Like now when you work with an artist or like the role of A&R doesn't even really in isolation. It's like, no, you're supposed to be like A&R and like manager and guide the career and business and this and like, it's like everybody is wearing all of these hats. And that's why I think you see you don't see a lot of like business relationships that last a long time anymore, really, in the
Hmm.
game, especially with like people in my age. And I think part of it is like it's so dynamic and whose role is defined. Like I'm a MC, but I probably spend more time sometimes sending emails and like doing logistical planning and business stuff just because out of necessity.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I cherished those times, and it was special to be around him because he's just such a savant. He's one of the other people that made the J. Cole comparison.
Okay.
And I'll never forget when he said that, bro. Like we left this session, was playing Pat, and it was like I had made this really dope track on the spot. It was the first time he'd really seen me like in the studio, like on the spot having to really do something. And we came back in the car and he was like, "Yo, like I knew you were good, but I seen what I just seen today. Like you could be like a J. Cole. Like you could." And I like remember that moment so vividly. Like I was like tearing up. Like it was like, you get emotional about something that you don't even realize it just hits you. You didn't even realize how important something was to you because it was just like the first time that anybody with credibility had seen me as I felt I was.
Hmm.
And it's funny how like J. Cole has become this representation of like the true me, and it's like, but we're just using that as the
Sure.
example.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the But it's not even about that. It's just about void of all the other bullshit. It's just like, oh, I'm keyed into like the type of music that you're making, whatever. um but I kind of forget what was the original question you asked, or I just went
No, yeah,
on a
I was
rant
just
about
thinking
those
about
days.
the how just that divide in the way that things were done when somebody like Dante started, you know what I mean? That like House of Pain was no longer a thing. And like he helped Everlast figure out that like you're supposed to be playing this guitar and singing these blues records with hip hop breakbeats underneath them. And it helped him discover his voice. And then, Everlast had a heart attack. And so Dante actually finished that album for him while he was in the hospital. It's just such a different thing from the way that it's done now, where it's almost like the kind of like communal division of labor thing that used to happen. In some ways, it's not like that anymore. And there's like really benefits on both sides of it.
No, it's true, man. And to be honest with you, it's like I feel the other side of it a lot. Like uh I feel lonely. Like there's days
Mm,
that like I've been trying to figure out my situation of building out my team. I've been managing myself pretty much ever since that time, and I've just now starting to add people to my team to try to help me and take things off of my plate. And I've realized at times, and I have a few people that help, but I realize that at times that it is about taking things logistically off my plate. But there's also this feeling, man, of being a part of a team.
yes.
It's like, I come from basketball and that
Yeah.
culture and team culture and winning with a team, sharing your loss with a team when something bad happens or some bullshit and hitting somebody and somebody's like, yeah, man, I'm equally as tight as you because I'm in this with you and we're in this together. That fucking sucks. Or like having a big win and it's like, yo, let's go. And so experiencing the wins and the losses kind of alone, man, it was like it's tough. And I envy that of like there's so much I'm lucky about to be able to build the career I've built in my era and have the control over it that I do. But I definitely envy that more like guys from your era and back even further Dante's era of like that camaraderie when they talk about now. um when you hear Dante tell old stories, man, and like especially you get him, I mean, it's just like I wonder sometimes. I'm like I would always be like, when do I get to like what's the culture that we're making? So often now I feel like we're in this like post modern phase of hip hop where everything is like an archival of like what's already been done because everything that's done now is about like financial success and void of this cultural element of like we're doing this because we
Hmm.
love it and there's a cultural status that we're in and there's a community. And I miss that, you know, and maybe those communities exist a little bit in pockets and I'm just on the outside looking in. And I feel like every time I try to go like build working relationships with artists that I consider my peers, um, it gets weird and I'm always disappointed. Like, I don't know, people it's just very uh it's like the whole rap industry is LA, like the way that people talk about like the industry in LA. Dante used to always say that like he LA'd you, you know, like when someone would front on you or
Right.
kind of Hollywood you.
Man, let's totally
I feel
make an
like
album together, man. Absolutely, brother. Yeah. Da, 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 you know what
yeah,
I mean? And then you just can't get a text answered. Like you're just unread for until you run into them again.
yeah, yeah, and that's like the dominant culture, and it's like I don't know, man. So I really am feeling the lack of that. I'm very humbled and like I really appreciate the OGs like yourself in the game where like I can feel that you have genuine respect for me.
Absolutely.
And that might feel like a given from the outside looking in because like you know numbers that I do I guess or like I don't know what the perception is but like but it's not I don't feel that from my peers all the time. I don't feel that from I feel it more from the OGs than my peers to be honest because I think they are made men and they care about the actual music and art and the culture and not necessarily are looking around for permission on what they can and can't fuck with all the time. But yeah, man, I envy that, and I wonder like what my generation, like what is going to be our thing that we create together. What's our community that we create together? There's been pockets, you know, like the whole Beast Coast movement
Yeah.
in the, you know, like and stuff like that. But when does it? I'd love to be a part of something like that in a genuine way. So I guess to this is a long rant, but I guess it's kind of a long echo of that point that the independence and the superhero thing, you know, it's like it's not by choice necessarily. Like I'm not into it like some guys like where it's like, yeah, I'm like the entrepreneurialism of it all is so like I do I'm the CEO. I'm like, you know, it's like, nah, I wish I had more teammates, man. I really do. I really do. Yeah.
I think a lot of it has to do with, I mean, yeah, in that context and like being part of, even if everybody's not on your team, but being contextualized by a scene is so important. Because as much as I wouldn't have chosen, like the one that I ended up in isn't the one that I would have chosen. I wouldn't have chosen, as much as I love all those artists, Rhyme Sayers, Def Jux, Living Legends, you know, Quantum, Stones Throw. I liked all that stuff. I respect all those people. And now looking back on it, I love it. And I feel a lot of camaraderie with those people. But in my mind, I wanted to be with Black Thought and the Roots and Common and Badu and all that. Like I wanted to be in OK Player Time. Like that's the thing I wanted to
Yeah.
be in.
Don't we all, man?
Dude, you know, and so there are still people that are out doing their thing, individuals, but there's not a scene of people that like they're going to the Merce concert and then next week they're going to go to the Jurassic 5 concert. The next week they're going to go to the Aesop Rock show and then LP is coming through and then, you know, and so now that that's gone, I'm like, damn, I do miss that. And I think I took it for granted when it happened. And now from my perspective, it seems like every artist just has their bubble. It just seems like they're like I'm trying to identify who are the like who would even be your peers. Like when you think about your who do you consider to be your peers? Because I don't know who they are. Like I can't there aren't
Yeah.
other people that I'm like, oh yeah, it's Marlon and so and so. Like I have to make the connections based on I get a sense of who you are and I get a sense of who somebody else is. And like, yeah, Marlon and JID seem like similar to me. You know what I mean? But I don't know. Like who would that even be?
Yeah, you know, yeah, exactly. It's tough. It's tough. And it kind of, that's how it's always been in my life, man. Like, you know, I went to school with the white kids, you know, Upper West Side, and I was like cool with them. But then I was Harlem and South Bronx running around, only white kid. Then I'm in Hell's Kid. Like, I never was just fit into a group. I always had to be like chop 20% or more off myself to fit into wherever I was. And I became you know, really good at doing that and navigating all these spaces and speaking to a lot of different people, but it's never just like, oh yeah, you sit in this space. And you know, that's part of the challenge. I think yeah, if like JID, Saba, Smino, like it's kind of the way you were like see yourself more in that world, like the Roots and those guys. Is like I almost like kind of envy the community that I see there amongst the younger people doing like musical hip hop stuff that's not all about like, no, I'm rapping better than you and you rapping better than me. And it's like, you know what I mean? Like I like those people, and I see a certain community there. Um I think I'm more there than with all like the rap stuff. It's like there's like these segmentations. There's like Rock Marcy and Griselda and all like that stuff, which is dope. And then there's like the Saba Smino, JID, Earth Gang, you know. Um, but I can't lie to you. I feel the same way. It's like there's worlds I'd rather be in, but I don't feel like I fit straight up in any one of these worlds. And even like the Robert Glasper, Terrace Martin, I'd love to like I love working with the musicians at a high level, and I would love to be honored to be in that world, a little bit. And yeah, I would hope that I could like amalgamate and like create my own world, but also be included in some of these other spaces. But it's hard too, because it's like there's also just certain stuff I can't be mad at, right? It's like certain people know me and like me and they known about me for a long time, but it's just like when you are white in a black culture, it's like dudes are not I could put myself in somebody's other shoes, and I've done this a million times. When I start to think to myself, like, this person knows me and they fuck with me, and why don't they put their arm around me or give me this opportunity or whatever? It's because I could imagine being them and saying, if I'm gonna give time, give cosign, give you know, space, access, and opportunity to somebody in this space, why would I give it to him
Yeah.
of all people?
Yep.
And I understand that,
Yes.
and I can't be mad at that.
Yep.
I can't be mad at that at all. Like,
Yep. These people are
so
doing what they're
so
supposed to do.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I saw another prominent European American artist was just asking like, are white people guests in the House of Hip Hop? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. And he was like, I deserve to be here. Don't get it twisted, But yeah, I'm a guest, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's what being a guest is. It's like you don't ever decide if you are allowed to be here or not. Like you always are just, if I'm welcome, I'm here. If I'm not, I'm not. And it just is what it is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. But it's like I feel like, like I got records with like Havoc, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like I got like there's certain people, it's like I have the respect from the people that really
Mm-hmm.
give a shit.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a lot of people that I like to call bullshit on. Like that the whole culture shit to me is so overused. It's like the people that care about like the culture, eh, most of them are so much older, bro.
Yeah.
Like it's been about money for so long, bro. Like it's and I'm not always the one. I don't always feel it's my place to call bullshit on shit, but I do feel like people take refuge behind what they feel like they don't owe me
Mm-hmm.
to like not to not give opportunities that are just no brainers. You know what I mean? Or not give credit or not just give the ears. That's all I really want is the ears.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And let's let the art do the work. Give the ears in an honest way, and then you decide if you want to invite me to the party or the cool table or not. But I think if you're being objective, and listening to the music, and so I'm a human being, man. It's
Right.
like, of course, it gets frustrating at times where you feel like, um, but these days it used to come from this place of like, where I was less emotionally developed and I was more on my New York shit. It was like, motherfucker, nah, give me my just do. You know what I'm saying? And now
It,
it's
it
more so
fuels
like
great
I'm just
music.
like,
Like that feeling can fuel some
it,
great rap. You can make a lot of
it
great
does,
rap
yo.
music
It
if you feel
really,
that way. Like feeling
it
fronted on
really
is a
does.
great, like, man, you can fill a notebook with
Oh,
that.
bro, the fronted on verses are the easiest to write.
Yeah.
Like you come in and it's just like, but the truth is, I know that it's just my own. It's my own. It's just sad. Like there's a sadness within me and a loneliness within me,
Mm-hmm.
on the path that I've chosen. And it doesn't compare to like like anything of real, people that are on paths that they didn't choose that face real oppression. Like,
Yeah,
like
I mean,
it's
500 years of oppression, and yeah, you give your music to the world, and they steal it and appropriate it and call themselves,
yeah,
and then and then white people
yeah,
call themselves the rap god and the king of rock and all this other stuff. It's
yeah, yeah,
full. It's
yeah.
like, yeah, it
But
just is what it is.
also, I feel like we all have to reach a point. And it's funny with Dante, used to always say, like, he would be like, he's like, I feel like the real ones, like, they never don't apologize for being white though. Like, that's where people fuck up.
Hmm.
Because it's like there's almost like a because my thing is, it's like I'm really from New York. Like, I'm really like I acknowledge I'm a guest in this space culturally, but also like I've I'm not like when I came into the game, like my resume in terms of the issues I've spoken on, the art that I've made, where
Hmm.
I've stood on certain things,
Hmm.
it's like I'm like 8, 10 years in now.
Hmm.
And at a certain point as a man, it's like I'm not gonna keep explaining myself over and over again when the people that matter get it, they respect it and they understand. And at a certain point, it can border on that cringy like appeasement thing.
Oh yeah.
It's like I'm not just gonna sit here and like hit all the lines I gotta hit every time this comes up. I gotta apologize 6 times about every statement. It's like no, like I'm allowed to have critiques of this place. It's like I'm allowed to, like I'm allowed to have thoughts and feelings and have disagreements, and it's like we have to be able to hold two truths at the same time. Which is that you feel what I'm saying a little bit?
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting because I've always seen Dante encounter distinction to other people from his time, other like white people from his time, and I've always felt this authenticity and respect for Dante that I lost a long time ago for some of the other guys that are from his generation. Almost to the point where like if they don't like Dante, it makes me like Dante more. Like, you know what I mean? And know that like something is off about them, and like trying to constantly project this image. And a lot of times the people that are projecting that image is because they're covering the fact that they've got something to cover. It's interesting too.
Yeah, like this is not something that I tried on in my 20s.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And then got over it and then like got the house and the wife and kids, and now it's like, but I still wear like but I wear New Balances and like shop at Kith still. It's like this is like I'm from New York, man. This is the soundtrack to my life. This is my story. This is who I am. And that's the hard part I think about the misunderstood thing is it's like when I go out in the world, I carry all the privileges of a white man, you know, and that's indisputable, man. And that's something that I wrestle with and talked about in my music and owned. Um, but the thing is like for me, like I can't take it off either. Like I can't take hip hop off. Like then I'm not myself. Like my story is still my story.
Hmm.
And that's something that's a personal story. It's not really anything anybody owes me,
Right.
but it's something that I've had to reconcile with myself to be able to say, like, yo, like your story, things that were difficult for you growing up, trauma that you've sustained,
Hmm.
pain that you've had,
Hmm.
the unique singularity of your different predicaments and why they were really difficult for you, that is real
Hmm.
and that is valid
Hmm.
and that is okay.
Hmm.
And you can acknowledge your privilege and where you stand in the world and the advantages that you have with that, and acknowledge and grieve for the pain and the frustration and the trauma of how hard it was to be you
Right.
growing up where you grew up,
Yeah.
and then being trying to express yourself in the place that you've been trying to express yourself, and trying to hold those two ideas at the same time has been a personal, a challenge, but it's somewhere where I think I'm growing and getting better at.
I was recently talking to a friend of mine who we were just talking, and this person had been really trying to assert themselves and really trying to figure it out, and got into an area where they had really kind of stepped on some other people's toes. And we were talking through it, and they shared with me some of the things that happened to them in their childhood, and they just bursted into tears, like erupted with emotion. And I had never heard this. I knew there was something. I mean, all of us have something in our childhood that's just very real. Most of us have lived through some sort of traumatic nightmares. But even if it's nothing huge, even if it's not, the big three traumatic things, you know what I mean? All of us have experienced something that made us just feel like we weren't worthy, feel like we weren't capable, feel like we're outsiders, feel like we're not accepted. Something. There's something going on inside of each one of us. And maybe in times when people still lived with their extended families, when people lived with communities, when people weren't so isolated, maybe they didn't need therapy. Maybe therapy was just a part of natural life, the same way you didn't have to look for organic food. All the food was just grown with seeds and dirt and water and sun and a little care and know-how. There was a time when that was all of the fruit, all of the vegetables, it was all grown like that. You didn't have to look for organic stuff. But then once you get this really unnatural approach to life, now you've got to actually look for organic. I think that therapy is something like that. I think that when we lived with our aunts and uncles and grandparents and extended families and all this kind of stuff, I think that therapy was something that was just part of communal living and extended family living. Now we got this hyper individualized thing where at best we have our nuclear family, but most of us don't even have that. A lot of us don't even have that. And we're interacting with people, either just people that we both have the same job that we can't stand, or people online. And a lot of times we're interacting and kind of objectifying people by looking at each other on social media, like some things, don't like other things, argue with some people about this and that. Very strange life we're living, and our hearts need each other. And so I was telling this friend of mine that, like, man, I'm down to talk through this stuff with you, but the fact that you're kind of stepping on other people's toes, and the fact that this stuff is still bubbling up, it's right under the surface for you. I feel like you might be ready for therapy. You talk to a therapist, and like, you can't step on the therapist's toes. You can be toxic and messy and mean and petty, and like, you can bring all that to the therapist because they don't have personal emotional needs that they need you to uphold, and me, they don't need us for that. Like, these are trained, licensed professionals who are here to serve us, and they are totally cool to hear and see all the wackest parts of who we are. So instead of gossiping, instead of being petty, instead of judging, instead of all this kind of stuff, talking to a therapist about it can help us work through some of the things that we've accumulated in the crazy lives that we all lead. So betterhelp.com, betterhelp.com is it's an online platform full of trained, licensed professionals all over the world. So just a big network. And that's what I use for therapy. And it's been tremendously helpful for me. I do a lot of things that are therapeutic. Music's therapeutic, podcasting is therapeutic. I'm in all kind of groups and spiritual circles and all this kind of stuff. All that stuff is therapeutic, but therapy is a very specific thing, an experience. And if you go to betterhelp.com/travelers, that lets them know that we sent you. So they give us some money, like they give us a commission, and they also give you a discount on your first month of therapy. You get to tell them what kind of therapist you want. You tell them your financial situation. A lot of times they'll take some of the money off your monthly cost for therapy. It's not cheap, therapy is an investment. But if you think about the fact that the person on the other end of those calls went through all kind of training, and they got all type of student loans, and they're trying to make it work and make ends meet too, it starts to make sense. If you think about over the course of the month, like, how much is that per day? for me to actually have space and time and opportunity for to just work through what's going on with me. So I couldn't recommend it more highly. We actually reached out to them and asked them if we could partner, and they were happy to do it, and so are we. So go to betterhelp.com/travelers and see what's up with this therapy thing. Just from observing and like listening to your interviews and stuff, I always think it seems to me like your best interviews are with Sway. It was Sway. It seems like he understands you the most. Does that feel that way to you?
So much. That guy, that yeah. Every time I leave there, I feel like, all right, you know what I mean? Someone sees me out here, you know
Yes.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that dude, yeah, yeah.
He is like the ultimate just ambassador, and like he's the embodiment of hip hop in so many ways. You know what I mean? I don't know if anybody has a more kind of universal lens on hip hop than him. It's pretty amazing. And yeah, when he talks to you, like it always he's actually some of the talks that I've seen you have with him, he actually puts into words some of the things that I see about you. You know what I mean? That I'm like, oh, that's what that is. But so I heard you talking to him about the fact that in terms of your business model, like streaming is so much of it. And that's one of the things that's one of the main shifts I see from when we had our moment and where you're at now, because it was all LimeWire and SoulSeek and all that kind of stuff. And so people were, getting our music and listening to it and burning it for each other and sharing it with each other. And we have no idea. I have no idea how many times a lot of my songs have been played. You know what I mean? But the flip side of that is that everybody had to come to a show in order to actually engage it. And so we always were on the road. And then at the show, if you put on a good show, people would buy the CD. So we did sell a lot more physical copies. But I just wonder, how does that, like, is that a generate, like, are these different fan pockets that you're talking about, like, are they actually like streaming your music, or like are those streams coming from all different parts of your like listener base, or how's that come together, you think?
Man, it is such a crazy landscape right now because, all these places are their own world. Like Spotify and my fans on Spotify, that's like its whole world in itself.
Mm,
And some of these people, for example, it's like I got World Champs got like 20 million streams.
mhm.
There's probably a good number of people. Like I get tweets all the time where people are like, "Yo, wait a minute, like Marlon Craft's white?" you know, because they just had World Champ got served to them through the algorithm. They liked it, they saved it, they listened to it every day, or or some other song, but they haven't made it to that next stage of figuring out who Marlon Craft the person is yet.
Right.
And and then you've got, the Instagram people are one people and the Facebook people are one people. Um, the thing about it that I'm learning and realizing now is that is the real sauce of people really knowing who you are and buying in, because then you can always sell them a good.
Yes.
Like a song is like, the thing about streaming is it's just tech. Like they change stuff all the time and then the streams dip and the stream like they change algorithms, and it's so it feels very, though I'm like making a pretty good living, it's like it feels very tenuous.
Okay.
And I feel this real imperative to build my merch business and my ticket business to like a point that's comparable, because it just still feels like something that can be taken away,
Yeah.
and it's crazy to me though, bro. When I back in that day, I was a fan when it was like the mixtape stuff, and I was on LimeWire, and we really culturally thought that like music should be free. Like it felt. I'll admit, like the first time I heard about Nipsey selling his album for $100, I had no context, and I was like, "What type of shit is that?" Like I almost felt entitled to like the music, and we just had, now that I have a context, I'm always like, man, how did dudes make money back then? Like during that time, like holy shit, man, especially because even when you do stealth stuff, it's like you still producing hard copies and all that stuff. And so yeah, man, it's a very sometimes you don't know who's who. Like in terms of the fans, like you can see certain demographic breakdowns and everything like that. But I think that's the hardest part is like trying to figure out really who your fan base is and trying to figure out how to aggregate them in one place as much as possible because they're just so spread out and all over the place. That's why I think for me it's like the tickets haven't caught all the way up yet with like the streams because it's like even just communicating to these people. How do I communicate? I got like millions of monthly listeners or whatever, but who's gatekeeping that information?
Yeah.
What's the data?
Yeah.
Like, you know,
People talk a lot about getting emails, and
yeah.
I've done some of that, and it's cool. And they do have, like, you send out an email blast, and people that are on your email list, like those are usually people that'll convert to whatever actionable item you're trying to invite them to. But that's not it. That email can't be it, man. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just
This is the challenge though for everybody. Like it's the same challenge for me. Like I mean, even and to be honest, it's fucked up because this is where the only way is to feed the machine. Like that's what's hard to like to get those people outside of the core people. You could drop the best song of all time. That's what's so hard. It's like the merit of how good things are or aren't. You could spend 3 years and make an album that is just like one of the great works of art of all time, and it wouldn't matter because it's only one touch point in a sea of things that are trying to capture people's attention and all that stuff. So, the consistency of how much you have to produce and how much you have to release. And it's a trade-off, right? Like it's like I get to own all this stuff. I could do it from my apartment, like I don't have to go to any company to, so overall it's definitely net more positive, I guess. But it is everything is geared towards more, produce more, make more, do more, serve more. Because the more these social media platforms and the more like these DSPs and the places where everything is hosted, the more things are being produced, the greater the value of their marketplace.
yeah.
So they kind of create a situation where you have to just give so much in order to generate momentum. Um, I do think things still matter. Like what I'm learning now is, uh, like I do think there's still a piece of it, right? Like if I had a bunch of pictures with like other famous rappers, I think I'd sell more tickets to my shows.
Hmm.
Like I do think there's a social sense of like that last thing about either community or the FOMO that people feel if they feel like they're missing out on something that is becoming cool or really culturally relevant in an elevated way. Um, I think that makes them want to buy into it more. But yeah, it's hard. So much of it is just feeding the algorithm, man, and then navigating what you feel comfortable with, doing in that way. And because it's like I people have told me so many times, like I could like if I the way these algorithms work, like if I do a freestyle on TikTok every 2 days for like 6 months, it's like multiple things are gonna go viral. Like that's a fact. Like like something would work, but that's just one example of something where I'm like, no, like I don't want to use my art in that way. Like that's just not how I want to do it. So it's a lot of navigation, you know.
It's like I was here before this stuff came out, before this stuff happened, and like so yeah, when we came along, it was the file sharing days, and that at least felt like it was like a double edged sword, because on the one hand, yes, we didn't get that sale that moment, but if it meant that those people would come check out a show or like people could spread the word about us more, it did feel like there was a double edge there. Like there may be some help there. And so then when social media started to happen, there was this feeling that like, man, this is going to democratize everything. Like we're going to be able to communicate directly with our fans. People can decide who they want. People can curate their own feed of who they want to see and like find the artists that speak to them. And that we would have all this opportunity between the streaming services and YouTube and social media, that we would have as independent creatives, like we would have so much more access. And now, man, it just feels like these companies, it's just different companies, but like now they even own every independent thing. Like not only did they own like the all of the big stuff, but they own everybody from the minute you try to even start having a viral moment or whatever. All of that ultimately feeds them, and it ultimately just benefits the platform.
Capitalism all over this shit, man. It's like and that's why I get, that's why I don't even relate to these. That's why I don't wave the indie flag anymore.
Hmm.
Like when I first came in the game, I was like, I like remember a bunch of people bought the pre-order to like my first like mixtape, and we like charted on like number 2 on iTunes, and I was like, I'm doing this with no label, and I'm doing this with no this, and then there's a bunch of guys now that like kind of their whole spiel is that like it's like, look, I'm independent, and giving a bunch of people a bunch of advice that's like half correct some of
Right,
the
right.
time, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
and all this and I'm always like looking at this and I'm just like, man, I'm it's like you not signed to a label, but you just work for Meta, bro.
Hmm.
Like you feed in Meta, like you paying for ads for Meta, you're feeding them like you working for them. Like your whole shit is an advertisement for to people to make more content and for millions of more people to pursue a content overload methodology of trying to get on and get famous and get popping. And by the way, like I'm not saying that that's necessarily the wrong way to go about it, but it's like don't act like you're like exempt. You're not like, you're not like having people to your shed in the woods for like intimate shows and they're just like spreading word of mouth. It's like, come on, bro, we're all at the behest of these corporations. They own everything. And so it's like, it's kind of like yeah, it's weird. I don't like that. That stuff bothers me, to be honest. Like I see a lot of people misleading fan bases
Hmm.
about like what they're doing and how they're doing it and how like revolutionary and off the beaten trail it is. And what kills me too though is like there's never a conversation about what it does to the art and to the music.
Hmm.
It's like dudes would be like, "Yo, I made 11 albums and this," and it's like you're just not working hard enough. And it's like your 11 albums suck, bro. Like they're not good. Like, like what's the mission? Like is the mission to make some type of a living doing what you love and creating art that you're proud of and chasing artistic elevation that fulfills yourself and other people? Or is the mission to just more, 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 more? And then if that's really the mission, that's the same mission as everybody else. So you're just a shittier capitalist than everybody else then. You know what I mean? You're just set playing the same game, just not necessarily as well. So um yeah, I don't know. I get kind of disillusioned by the landscape, and I guess maybe it sounds a little bit like I think that I'm exempt from that critique, but I don't because it's like I'm still navigating the same things. It's like I have to make decisions on how to create content based on what's going to engage. I have to make decisions based on how, it's like we're all in it. But I feel like there's a real, and I think it's a thing particularly of now and in my generation. It's like uh, humility just doesn't sell. Humility's cool when like you have a lot of accolades and like everyone loves that J. Cole like wears a t-shirt and shit now because he's mad famous and a gazillionaire and has a label and Grammy nominations and all that shit. He wasn't doing that when he came out, and you wouldn't have fucked with it then if he did. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like, I struggle with who I want to be and what I think I should be in order to help me succeed more. It's always a war.
It's funny that one of the other people that I see you as being in a similar vein with, and it's not as readily understandable, I think, as the Cole thing, but Joe Budden. Like, dude, like,
Wow, that's so interesting.
yeah, man.
Elaborate on that.
Just because of the
That's
way that Budden is somebody that really spit, but he was very clear that like my music is an opportunity for me to explore my emotions. I share it completely in this music. I stand in a room with whatever that, and there was something about There was something about the way that he did his thing where like these hardcore New York street type of fans would stand in a room and like be with a man who was about to cry on a record and also was fly and also was, you know, of the culture and like, you know, so there's something about that too, that even like in the tone and the timbre of the voice, the, you know, and the posture and the, you know, that thing along with the content and like where it's coming from. But along with that, like I'm still mad for Joe, but I'm still mad for what the industry is doing to him to this day. You know what I mean? And
Mm.
he pisses a lot of people off. I understand that. He's always been nice to me. He's one of those people that like a lot of people hate him. He's always been good to me for no reason. Probably the connection that I have with him. And he probably sees a similar thing. And I bet if somebody asked him about he probably has shouted you out. I wouldn't be surprised. If he hasn't, it just hasn't come up yet. But this guy, man, when I think about like the fact that he was pouring his heart into his music and rhyming at such a high level and like putting out these manifestos about, you know, for as jarring and abrasive as he can be, he's exploring the reasons for all of that for the whole world to pick apart in a space in a battle rap space where like you think about what he's doing and then he's in the same realm with Crooked Eye, you know what I'm saying? And all these like battle rap type of thing. And the fact that he at some point was like, you know what? I can talk about rap and do better than I can rapping, even though he's an elite level MC and extremely creative, extremely prolific and productive. He's being rewarded more for talking about art because of the fact that that is producing content. And he's always known that too. Like
Yeah.
he's always been a master of it. It's like no matter how great I rap, I better show you my girlfriend's butt twice a week. You know what I'm saying? Just to keep
Right.
you coming. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? But man, and then the fact that like something about Drake saying to him like, "You're a failed rapper." I rarely want to punch people still in life,
Yeah,
but I'm like, man,
that did it.
I feel this like sense of like defensive anger for Button. You know what I mean? And yeah, so this conversation just kind of like brought all of that back for me, man.
Man, that's I mean, I pretty much agree with just about everything you just said. I mean, I I was into Joe Budden. Like I never got like deep. It was LimeWire era for me.
Hmm.
So it would always be just like songs that I would find that I would really dig. I never was like on the projects and following along in that way.
Yeah.
But it was that emotional vulnerability that was, see, like, so for me, it was, Kid Cudi came at a time in my life where I was like 15, 16 years old and
Right.
dealing with this anxiety and had been for years and didn't have the language for it and didn't have an okay from anybody around me in New York that was like, this is a thing that people feel, this is okay to like have these emotions. And I'll just never forget, like I remember when Kid Cudi dropped Soundtrack to My Life, and I remember being on my block, with people that was out there, and it was like the security guards was chilling. We used to have security, but they was like cool. They used to like smoke with dudes and chill and shit. But they were like, you know, I remember the dude being like, "That new Cudi shit is hard." Like he's like, "You heard that?" And that was the first time I'm like, the song's going. I got some issues that nobody can see, and all of these emotions are pouring out of me. And I'm like, "You fuck with that?" I'm like, "Whoa, the power of music, right?" But the thing is, Budden, like to your point, like Cudi was singing and doing like shit with MGMT and all that shit. Like Budden was rapping on some barred out, like hard shit, the shit that we listened to in New York at the time, and standing on it, and and still speaking from that place. And I see the comparison for real because I've always felt like that's kind of my mission too. Like, in terms of there has to be a middle ground for guys like me, people like me that grew up in this toxic masculine urban environment that are trying to unlearn all this shit. I'm 30 years old. I'm still trying to get this fucking monkey off my back. You know what I'm saying? Of not feeling like it's okay to be vulnerable or sad or any emotion besides angry,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
And but I still am from the culture that I'm from and love the things that I love. And I still am a New York motherfucker. And we need it to not be cheesy, bro. We need it to not be corny. We need it to be cool. And it can be cool, and it is cool. And not cool in the way of like some facade that makes it okay, to engage with, but cool in the way of like redefining what we agree on is strength, what we agree on is admirable, so it's like, so yeah, like I want to be the same dude wearing a fucking, vintage Pele Pele from the 90s that, some dude would have stabbed you in at the tunnel, rapping about how I'm trying to fucking cry more often.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And that to me, I think can hold a lot of power, and a lot of it can be very poignant because, I would have believed that person when I was a kid, and I would have been like, oh, he can toe the line. And I see that with respect to Bud, and like I feel you on that. And that is definitely a mission for me, because one of the things that I've realized too, my music, I've made a lot of outwardly what people call political records,
Hmm.
speaking on white supremacy in America and institutionalized racism and all these things, very like explicitly and outwardly. Um, but the more that I've learned and grown as a person, the more that I've realized that the emotional vulnerability stuff, is one and the same with that
Oh
stuff.
yeah,
Like
absolutely.
trying to give people, catalyze growth individually in people emotionally is radical.
Yeah.
And in order for people to become, um, uh, you know, understand their own revolutionary potential, they have to get out from under the burdens of that stuff, and feel free to love and to care about themselves and about other people. And in some ways, those records sometimes can do more towards that end than me just like listing a bunch of facts real aggressively that you probably either like disagree with or you agree with, or maybe you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So like that's why I've been doing less of those records, because not because I'm tired of doing it, not because I like paid my dues and now I'm just doing my, it's like because it just feels uh more impactful oftentimes. And so yeah, this shitting on failed rappers just, I mean, that's crazy. Like, you know how hard it is to make a living as a musician? It's like, or doing anything in art. It's like, I mean, I hear you on that.
Yeah, anybody saying failed rapper, that's like saying a failed marriage. Like, okay, you ever tried to be
Yeah,
married? You know what I mean? If somebody was married
yeah,
for 10 years and then they're not married anymore, that's not a failed marriage. It was very successful and then you know what I mean? It came to an
right,
end.
right.
Yeah, I get defensive for guys like, but like I'm still defensive like on behalf of Nicki Minaj, who I've never met. You know what I mean? Like the fact, and I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like all these like other like women artists that they're like, yeah, this is the new one, and I'm like, no, Nicki is actually ill though. Like you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah,
it's like
yeah,
dude, did you hear? She's held her own with everybody. She held her own with Wayne and Jay, and like over and over and over again. Like I get mad on
yeah,
behalf of other of artists that I don't even know from them getting fronted on, and these are
yeah.
people way more successful than I've ever been. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that's love. Like yeah, exactly. You're not even mad on behalf of yourself. You're mad on like, but I feel you because, but that's what they do, man. It's like Nikki, it's like they commodify people, and
Right.
then when they're done with you, they just cast you away
Yeah.
like a commodity, like some shit that they don't need anymore. And there's no real like homage. Like I really wonder. This year was all the hip hop 50 celebrations and everything, and even there was a lot of really cool stuff, but also it's so corporate.
Hmm.
Like like everything was so corporate. It's like, at this rate, it's like it's gonna be like hip hop 75 anniversary, like presented by Chase Bank. It's like it's a little weird, I think, on the whole, but there's a lot of really dope stuff. And the great part about it is you get to see the admiration and respect
Hmm.
that I think the culture really does have for its legends, even if it's not always executed perfectly.
Right.
I think it's there and it's felt and it's present. And I wonder how people are gonna be seen. Like I wonder when Lil Wayne is really old, like how we're gonna like deal with some of these people? Are we going to have the same reverence for, like, who are we going to have the reverence for? I wonder about Drake. Are we going to have the reverence for Drake in that same way that like people feel about like LL Cool J or somebody like that, or even about Michael Jackson or somebody like that? You know, like I don't know that emotionally and culturally, like there's scale and there's bigness,
Hmm.
but what does stuff really mean to people's souls?
Yeah.
And we conflate popularity with, it's like just because we all know the words. Like Drake will always say that a lot, you know, not to make this about, you know, Drake or whatever, but Drake will always say that a lot where he's like, that would be like a defense. It'll be like, play that shit and see if anybody knows the words, or like play
Right.
that shit and see if it ring off in the club, you
Yeah.
know what I mean, or whatever. It's like that doesn't mean just because everybody knows this and everybody knew Billie Jean, that doesn't mean they're the same thing.
Right.
You know, like, and I wonder how history is going to treat some of this stuff that targets at our more toxic emotions and targets at not the best versions of ourselves. I wonder if it'll be remembered in the same
It's
light.
crazy, like with him specifically, and I know really be talking about people, and I know he's a very nice person. Like everybody that I know that knows him is like, man, you couldn't know a cooler guy. But
Yeah,
there's something
it's all
about
love.
the energy of that music that there's certain things that I have listened to, like when I'm in the gym or something like that. And at some point, I realized, like, even when this stuff is motivating me, it's for spiteful reasons. You know what I mean? Like if I'm ever like running on a treadmill to a Drake song, it's like I'm gonna get back at all the people that did me wrong and they're fronting on me. I'm gonna come back thin, and I'm you know what I'm saying? I'm like, man,
Yeah,
this
yeah,
isn't
yeah,
good.
yeah,
This is not good. It was talking
yeah.
about the like emotional kind of vulnerable growth and that being strength and cool thing. Like man, when Jay-Z made 444, I know that a lot of the people that were earlier to making that kind of music, myself included, a number of my friends, were like, man, how they just going to act like this is the first time this has ever happened? And there were people that I think felt a sense of, man, we've been in these streets like this, you know. And again, I thought about Budden, and I'm like, man, it's ill because a lot of Budden's cadences actually came from Jay. But in terms of like what Budden was bearing from his soul, you know what I mean? Like Jake caught up to him. And to me, what's so dope about the 444 thing is, first of all, that man has done everything an hip hop artist can do. It just takes him. He
Yeah.
does it when he's ready to do it. And with that one, like man, he he didn't go into that realm until he had the emotional openings that allowed for it to happen. You know what I mean? And when he did it, he really did it, man. And I think that in terms of the people that I know as being these like iconic, legendary people, I know for sure that that Jay Z has, and what's a trip is that we went and saw, me and my wife went and saw the show with him and Beyonce, and so he's mostly performing for Beyonce's crowd at that show, and so all the songs he's doing, me and my wife are looking at each other like, is this one of the dope Jay Z records? But in a stadium full of Beyonce fans, like these are the joints. And I'm like, oh, we don't even like the same songs. So he's almost got two catalogs. Like he's got one that's like these are the ones that go all over the world and on the radio, and there's some great rapping on there too, but like these are the ones where I'm really being an artist. And I think that like a lot of the great artists have been able to do both. Sometimes in the same song, sometimes not the same ones, you know. But so many of these people, like I'm not listening to anything from their top 5 joints on Spotify. But when I dig in a little bit deeper, there are songs that speak to my soul. And to your point, yeah, I don't know if some of these, you know, um, is Cardi B gonna feel the same to people as Queen Latifah does? I don't know.
And that's hits on something a little bigger that I struggle with, and I try to not be like the party pooper all the time because especially being around younger people and stuff, but it's at a certain point the what has to be
Right.
wrestled with.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we're in a generation of like the who,
Yeah.
and when it's like the right who that's like succeeding, then it's like we're not going to talk about the what because we're just so happy about the who. is getting
Not to
success.
mention the why.
Right. And then the why, right, it's like because it's who's still bottom line is being served, and I wonder that a lot about a lot of that contemporarily where I'm sitting there being like, yo, like at a certain point we have to talk about like what it is, you know what I mean? Like what's being said, what the music is, what the so and that line to me, that's what's frustrating me. The line has been completely blurred between like culture and capitalism. Like it's just there's no I can't see it. Like it's just that success is measured in entrepreneurialism for all artists, even artists like myself.
Yeah, man. Yeah. From day one on the Travelers Podcast, Zakat Foundation, Zakat Foundation, has been supporting these podcast episodes, these conversations, and they're a global humanitarian organization. So it's really dope that they understand the necessity of building culture and contributing to culture. There's something called the cultural imperative, which basically means that if anything is going to be a movement that's actually going to take root, it's got to have a cultural element to it. And so Zakat Foundation understands that. They do really dope work all over the world. You've heard me say these things about them, but they're an Islamic-led organization, a Muslim-led organization, but they don't only help Muslims. They help people wherever help is needed. They don't use their work to proselytize. They work with people in the communities that they partner with. And it's a really incredible organization. And for as much as I can trust this kind of like global network, I trust them. My interactions with them have been such that I believe that I have a sense for where their heart is at and for the way that they attempt and intend to show up and do this work. And so we're very grateful to partner with them. Go to Zakat US, Zakat US on social media. You can follow all the dope work that they do. And online, go to zakat.org. Also, Zakat Foundation of America on Facebook for the people that still mess around over there. But Zakat Foundation is dope. So find something that they're doing while you're listening to this. I mean, really, you can put $5 down and they're going to get a hot meal to somebody that otherwise wouldn't eat. You might not be able to change the world, but you can change one person's world for one day with just $5. It's true. For $50 a month, you can sponsor an orphan. And I mean, 100% of that money goes to the actual children. And, if they have family, it supports their families as well. None of the money from the orphan program goes to operating costs or advertising or anything like that. So Zakat Foundation is the real thing. So head over there, put some money on something, and know that you're making a real contribution to somebody's life. I was watching your European run, like the most recent one on Instagram. And it's funny because Brendan, who's the producer of this podcast, BK1, that was my first DJ. He was my DJ for the first 10 years of my career. He was the first person to like record me and all that stuff.
So,
So the moments that you're having, like me and him had those, you know what I mean? Like I see, you
yeah,
know what I mean? Like you standing on stage and like you're in Europe and like these people are so excited just to be in a room with you and they're singing your words and just seeing you become overwhelmed. Man, seeing that moment, those moments for you was really dope, man. It was like really, really special to be able to see it because of how like genuine how genuinely it happened and how organically it happened, you know? And I just wonder,
man.
what does that what does that do for you in terms of like wanting to put more? Is that part of what makes you want to put more in the touring side? Or is that more of a bit is that more of a like, I just want to round out what I'm able to do, creatively and business wise? Or does a moment like that make you feel like, okay, how do I have this in every city across the world?
That's what it is, man. That's what it is. It's like you know, with my anxiety and stuff, it's like traveling has always been really difficult for
Mm,
me. Like when I was a kid, even like I could like go on sleepovers, like traveling, like flying, like a lot about it is very stressful.
mm,
And I was always scared because in the beginning, before the pandemic, I was like, I'm gonna have to be a road warrior. Like that's how I'm gonna like build it.
hmm.
You know what I mean? And I always had this thing of like, I don't know how I'm gonna do it. I don't know how I'm gonna be on the road for months at a time. Like I don't know that I can handle that. But but I'm gonna try and we'll see. And so everything like outside of the tour, it's like so stressful. Um, but then when I get on that stage and I have those moments, it's like, and I said this to a few crowds out there, like I told them exactly this, and I was like, man, this moment, I would do it all. I will do it all over again 100 times. I will get through all the things that make me uncomfortable to get here on this stage and have this moment because in a time in a world where like everything is so digital now, and it's a lot of times success means just like looking at stats raise on a graph, like to be there and feel it and feel how genuine it is and feel that these people see what I see in me. And that's the thing too, because I came back so rejuvenated and inspired and ready to work because, you know, sometimes it's hard. It's like you feel like, man, I've reached this place and whatever, and it's like the tickets aren't moving like I thought that they were going to move. Like, and it's like, when am I going to get to that next place? When am I going to get to, and, but then you get in there and it's like, man, the tickets did not tell the story of that room.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
you can't tell me everybody that was in that room knows, looks at me and they think I'm a fucking star. Like they know I can be doing 5,000 tickets here. They all felt it and they acted like it and they believed, and that makes me believe in myself, and it's reassuring and affirming to me, and it makes me want to just work harder to actualize that reality. You know what I mean? Um and to your point about people kind of commodifying that narrative, like it's really hard. I struggle with it, but it's like we have to let things be enough. It's like we're over there. If I'm in like Brussels, Belgium, and there's 150 people in Brussels, Belgium that came out and traveled to come see me do a show, and they're singing all my words back to me, and they're like doing so. I've never met these people. English not even their first
Right,
language.
right.
It's like that's so incredible,
Yes.
man. And sometimes, especially when you're in a position of me where you're basically managing yourself and doing all the business, you're forced to look at it like you might look at a show, and we didn't even undersell that. That's like my first time in the market. Like that's sturdy. Like that's cool. But like you might be looking at something and be like, okay, like I know that we like objectively undersold this from a business perspective. We like didn't achieve what I wanted to achieve, and I have to deal with that objective reality because I
Or
am
you're
the
thinking like,
business
man, the
runner.
promoter lost money tonight. Are they going to book me next time? You know what I'm saying? That's going
Right.
in the back of your brain.
Right. What do we have? Right. What do we have to do to it? But sometimes you have to let it be enough. Like we have to not believe these things and not just let them be contrived statements that we say. Like how special is it that 150 people on the other side of the world resonated enough with the art that I made from a place of whatever to come out and sing it with me and pay money and like we have to sit in that feeling. So,
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why when I came back to working with BK, because he was with me both like recording me when I couldn't even get a full song out. You know what I mean? Like I was still trying to figure that stuff out, still trying to find my voice, still trying to, and like this guy would just sit there in the, like he worked at a college radio station. And so we didn't have recording equipment, but they had like early Pro Tools there. And so we would go in there at nighttime when no one was around, and I would sit there and record and record and record and record. And there would just be like little glimpses of dopeness, you know what I mean? And hours of me trying to kick the same verses. And then we started doing that on stage where it'd be like we're going out, we're struggling, but like there was a little glimpse, but that like that one little part was dope, you know what I mean? And working with somebody, that's one of the other things about having a partner that is in it for those same moments. And So, that we've been doing this podcast for, I think we're coming up on 100 episodes. And there's times, especially with a podcast, it's so much work. And sometimes those numbers are abysmal. But like, man,
Hmm.
you like we've both done these things long enough to know, but like, no, there's special moments there though. Like if there's special
Yeah,
moments, then you have to keep on seeing what's up with that. Like looking in there, like, what's that about? You know what I mean? Like as long as there's
yeah,
some type of
yeah,
goosebumps, as long as there's some kind of tears, as long as there's some type of something, you know what I mean? Somebody's tattooing
yeah,
something, somebody's playing a song when their baby's born. For me, if somebody hits me up, is like, hey, I think I'm supposed to be Muslim. Can you help me? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
man, you got to measure it like that.
And I want to say too, the other side of that, it means a lot, and I appreciate how you say that it's exciting for you to see me have those moments, overseas, and like eh, I I hope I have in the past, but I also want to thank you for taking me on that tour with you guys when I went, with you and Evidence. That was like the second real tour I had ever done, but it was like the first one I did was a little messy. It was like my real entry point into seeing the professionalism and like what it really meant to be on a tour. And it was so much better for me than ending up on some tour where it was like Terminal 5, some like artist of the moment that was really big or something like that, going blowing shit out, like doing the thousands of tickets everywhere. Because it was like, it just watching the way you did your work. And I could tell, hearing you say now about the glimpses, like, because I could tell, like, for me, I was so green and I was such a kid,
Hmm.
and you were such a seasoned veteran. You know what I mean? And it was like, it, which is not to say that it didn't seem like you were having a good time, but it was like there's that thing. It was like you've been doing this for years. You know what I mean? Like you know how to do your shit. But I seen those moments where it would like be a particularly good night, and like, or where it would be moments in the set where it would just things would really elevate, and it would be like, damn. And I was just like, I don't know, I just left that tour with like a lot of respect for you guys, because it was just like, man, these guys are really living it. Like they're doing their shit, and they've been doing it for a long time, and they know how to do, and it's like I see now younger guys that are coming up, and I'm almost on the other side of it a little bit, where they're like, I can tell they think they're gonna breeze past me in a year,
Hmm.
and it's like, nah, bro. This is very, this is a very hard game, my friend. If you're here in 5 years making a living, I will be very impressed and happy for you, and
Right.
you'll be very lucky. Like it is, this is very, very hard. And I remember, um, feeling that way,
Hmm.
feeling that way when I left, seeing the level of work that you guys put in, and seeing like how well oiled of a machine it was, on the level of professionalism that you took to it, and how hard it was, because it was such a short run
Yeah.
for you guys, but for me, I felt like I was away from home forever. I was like, damn. So I left there not feeling like, oh, this is something that I'm gonna like, I'm gonna be doing twice the size of this in a year. I left there feeling like, wow, that was a masterclass in what it really means to do this for a living. And so I'm grateful for that, man. I'm really grateful for that, and it makes me happy on the other side of it that you take joy in seeing me do like my own tours and shit overseas and whatever, because it definitely, I learned invaluable stuff on that run.
It's interesting that you say that it seemed like I wasn't having fun because that was a low point for me. You know what I mean? Professionally and health wise. And I was struggling with my voice on that tour.
Yeah, I remember.
And
Yeah, yeah.
we had just I had been struggling with my voice for a while. And then I moved out of the country and I lost 40 pounds. And it's like, oh, now my voice works better. Like, you know what I mean? You can't support like all of this fat and a big voice at the same time. You know what I mean? You can do one or the other. But no, but like that particular run was really difficult for so many reasons. And I think about it as one of the points that made me decide to change the way that I do business. It was like in that lead up to when I'm like, I'm just gonna I feel like I'm ready to do this on my own. But you're right too, in the sense that when you're not feeling motivated, when you're not feeling particularly inspired, when you're not, like we were not in a moment at that time. You know what I mean? So like if you're
Right,
in a
right.
moment, the energy and just the euphoria of that will carry you. You know what I mean? But when you're on a tour and there's not that euphoria, there's not that extra inspirational thing, the the professionalism of it, the dedication to just doing this, the motivation becomes the excellence of just doing the job well.
Yeah, yeah,
And then the other part is like, whether I'm having a moment or not, the people that come to that show deserve as close to a moment as I can give them. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
they
yeah.
still deserve every bit of the show that they would have got if everything was going amazingly well, if I just fell in love yesterday with this thing.
Yeah, yeah, but that's what inspired me. That's honestly what inspired me because I could tell that it was like, not necessarily like a low point. I don't know, but I could tell that it was like,
It was work.
had that and yeah, it was work. Like I had that energy to it that it was like, this ain't their favorite tour. You know what I'm saying? Like I could tell, but that was kind of what was inspiring to me in a way because it was like still the level of like me and Dante be in the crowd every night and be like, yeah, man, like he sounds good as shit up there. He's fucking hitting every like the breath control is crazy. It's like there was just a level every night.
What's interesting too is like on that tour, I was like, yeah, man, this dude is good. Like initially me and Ev were like, yeah, anything Dante Ross wants, if we can do it, we're gonna give it to him because he's Dante Ross. You know what I'm saying? And we listened to your music and we're like, yeah, he's good. And then you came out and we are like, yeah, he's good. You were still learning the stage thing, and then immediately after that, you went on Funkmaster Flex. And Flex was just like, you came up and you put it down. Like you rhymed for a long time. You opened up. You were doing patterns. You did everything. And I remember him saying to you, "You're only here because Dante Ross. You know about Dante Ross?" And you're just kind of like, "Yeah, he's my." Like, well, yeah, I know Dante Ross. Like he's my manager. You know what I mean? And you did your thing, man. And he was just kind of like, "You said you got anxiety. That's weird." You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
he gave
yeah,
you nothing, but you were like, okay, you don't have to get, you know what I mean? Like there was something reverential that you had, like, you're Funk Master Flex and I'm me, and you get to talk to me however you want. And me and this Mike got our own thing going on that has nothing to do
yes,
with what you think of me. You don't owe me. You know what I'm saying? And I like that. But I also like how unrattled you were. You know what I mean? That you were just like, you don't have to, you don't owe me any particular type of red carpet, and it's fine. That's fine. Okay, now put the beat on.
yeah,
Just put the beat
yeah,
on.
yeah. Well, so there's layers to that
Mm, mm,
story,
mm,
man.
mm, mm.
I mean, people ask me about that shit a lot, but what's funny is that like everyone is so pissed, and if you go to the comment sections, it's just a bunch of people defending me, like, "Yo, that's so crazy." Just asked him about his anxiety, and they just rapped for 8 minutes, and he killed it. Why is he checking him? But I felt so validated by that whole situation because to me, that's how so many people in the industry treat me, but no one just ever gets to see it but me.
Aha, yeah.
And I don't ever get to complain about it because how do I look complaining about that shit? You know what I mean? So for the first time, it was on Front Street, and everyone got to see it, and everyone was like, "Yo, that's some bullshit." And I was sitting there like, "I know, right? Welcome to my fucking life." You know what I'm saying? So I felt really defended and seen by people because they were all like, everyone was like collectively was like, "That's mad corny." And the other part of it is, and then what I'll say is that like I wasn't that mad at Flex because at the end of the day, like he put me in the chair.
Yes.
And all I ever wanted, especially at that point in my career, was the opportunity. Like, do whatever you want. Like you said, you Funk Flex. Talk to me however you want to, bro. I get it. I'm the scrawny white boy. I'm up in here, but just give me this mic and let me do it. And let's let the people decide, where my skills are at. And So the fact that he put me in the chair, I wasn't even mad at him because I'm like, everybody treats me like that. And then they usually don't give me the chair. So I can't, like, that's just par for the course for me. And then, but at least he gave me the chair. So cool. The other part of it is I was so in the zone. I'm like, I knew I killed it. I did 8 minutes. I felt like a fucking moment. And at this point too, I was a little less seasoned, so I still get so my anxiety, like I get so anxious for things. Like I was so nervous. And then I did the moment is this adrenaline, this release, and I'm like, yo, I'm just did flex and I tore it down. And as soon as I stopped rapping, that was probably the weirdest part about it, was like within like 3 seconds of me started rapping, he's like, so I got a question. And he goes to ask me about the anxiety. I thought he said like, can you explain that to me like for someone who can't relate? And I thought he said can relate. That's what I heard in my like state of just being pulled out of the rhymes, whatever. So in a sense, I was kind of like, is Funk Flex admitting to me that he's got anxiety? Like like, did I just like bring the vulnerability out of Funk Flex? Because my like this is like that's kind of cool. Like whatever, da da da. So I wasn't like I was definitely confused and in a whirlwind, but I wasn't like offended. I didn't have time to be offended, and I thought it was cool. It wasn't until later that I realized that he said can't. But he tried to play me the whole time. Like he had me show up at like 11. I didn't rap till 3 a.m. I was exhausted. There's like bags under my eyes. I'm like, whatever, because he had someone else go before me. He showed up 2 hours late. I'm waiting. There's 3 in the morning. I'm there. I go up to rap. I came in ready. I was like, I had beats picked out. He's like, nah, you can't pick the beats. It's got to be, picked from him. So I went in with the DJ. I had more that I was gonna rap. I was gonna rap for like 11 minutes because I had a whole verse to like a trap tempo, like a double time tempo beat, because I wanted to like show the range, and I was gonna do that. And I picked a couple beats, and he was like, "Nah, you can only do one beat." He was like, "You can only do one beat. That's it." And I was kind of like, "Why? Like, don't you like, it's like you can only do one beat." Um, and he was just super kind of like Hollywooded me and shit. Um, so that's the other thing too. I would have went on. He did even more shit. So, so I already knew what it was when the cameras came on. It was already that energy. You know what I mean? And but like I said, I never really hold it against Flex because I feel so validated by that moment, and because like he just did to my face and publicly what I feel like everyone was doing to me behind the scenes, and at least he put me in the chair. And it's funny, like we never really talked after that, but we like DM'd once or twice, but he always like when people try to call him on it, he always would like show me love. Like I don't think he thinks he was hating. That's the vibe I've gotten from it. Like I think he was just again like didn't know how to look cool next to me, he felt like, and was whatever. But I don't think if you ask, I don't think he would be like, nah, that dude's whack. He would because he hit me with like a couple of my guys in the DMs and the comments. Like I don't think he's like, you know what I mean? It's like weird. So anyway, that's the long-winded. That's the whole flex thing. But yeah, it was a cool moment, and I would do it again. Like I think it would be like a kind of cool narrative thing, but I don't know. Who knows, man?
Yeah, no, that was a moment, man. And I remember not long after that, I remember just feeling like I could just see the stark contrast between him and Sway, and Flex is a person that's absolutely, I mean, it's just iconic and legendary. And so he has the right to do and be however he wants to be, but I just see the difference between him and Sway. Like Sway is so connected to what community really is about, and the fact that culture has a life of its own, the same way that people have a life of their own, and the way that a collective uh, energy and creativity is not something that you can just put a rope around and put a category. And so you just see the difference in the way that they engage. And it wasn't long after that when you were on, man, that Tyler went on here. And
That
Tyler,
was
man, dude,
awesome.
it was so dope, man. The way he was talking to Flex, and then once he started freestyling, me and Funk Flex in the index looking for buff neck dudes for rough butt sex. And Tyler and Flex is just like, "Yo, what are you talking about?" Oh my god, man! I
That was
was just like,
amazing, bro.
"This is what happens." You know what I mean? When you get like crystallized around, you know what I'm saying, around a certain idea of what creativity really is, you're gonna have Tyler come in there and just upset your whole thing, man. Yeah, it felt like a beautiful
No,
kind of full
that was
circle.
incredible, bro. It was like performance art. Like it was like he had like a whole thesis almost with his whole like I don't know if he went in there with that much intention, but it seemed like it, like he was trying to make a point. And yeah, that was really, really cool. It's funny now because like I mean, I had that flex verse or verses or whatever for like over a year because I just remember always feeling like I deserve these opportunities. I wanted these opportunities, and I always was like, yo, all right, if they're not giving me the opportunities, the thing they're giving me is time.
Hmm.
So I'm going to use that time and I'm just going to prepare all this stuff and I'm going to have it down cold and I'm just going to know. So whenever I get the call, they could wake me up at 2 a.m. and be like, yo, Flex wants you to come rap, and I'm going to be ready to make it a moment. And I think that's the type of preparation that is like necessary. That's what people don't understand sometimes about emceeing because there's a swagger to it. So it's like, and a lot of times there's a delivery where it's like the vibe is supposed to be that it's effortless.
Hmm.
Um, but I think moments are moments for a reason. Like I didn't get lucky that
Right.
that was a moment. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like I made that a moment, and like I made these other like Sway and all that. But and yeah, Sway is the best, bro. Like I consider him a friend. Like I'm proud to say that we haven't like spent a ton of time um off the cameras, but whenever we are on the cameras, we spend additional time off the cameras, and we stay in touch on the phone and just genuine like conversations about just family and life and um yeah, like I feel so lucky. Like that's the thing where you get there's that feeling of like when you there's like a kinship of the people that are really like in it for the right reasons and that have that understanding of that greater of that stewardship and that culture that like you're talking about. And it's like you have that moment where you identify each other as that, and then there's like this wall that
Right.
drops, and the way you can speak to each other is just so much more fluid. And I've just been honored that he saw that in me, and that wall dropped because obviously I saw it in him. Um, and but sometimes you meet these people and they're not what you think, like so that he's exactly who you think he is. That's what I always tell people about Sway. Like whatever you think he is, like the greatest vision you have of him as the steward of culture, like that's really how he is.
Yeah, man, and that's the real culture. So for me, like that was my upbringing. You know what I mean? Like men like that, like black men like that were the people that raised me and looked after me and taught me, and you know what I mean? So like to see somebody like that in that be in that role is just so perfect, man. And he's been it for a long time. Like he's been the touch point of the culture for a very long time. And his ability to love it unconditionally and like love the creatives unconditionally. One of the things when you were talking, I was like, I think one of the other things that makes people respond is that um this is back on a race thing, but like one of the things that like there are white people that come into black cultural spaces and show like the worst of who they are. You know what I mean? And it shows like what they actually think about the culture. You know what I mean? Like you think about the fact that like how did blackface develop? It's like these white people painting themselves to look like exaggerated versions of black stereotypes and then being the worst of who they are.
Mm,
You know what I'm saying? Like they're not like, but doing it in this black cultural space to communicate to white people, like, look what animals black people are. You know what I mean? But it's really them like getting out the worst of who they are as a person, you know?
right.
And so I think there's always going to be something about the like, I'm bringing all of myself to this thing because this artistic form and this cultural space is the space where I can examine all of who I am and arrive at the best of who I am. People that are sincere are able to be like, this culture is responsible for the best of me, and this art and the listeners and the people that came before and like deserve the best of me. And like this is where I can become the best of who I am. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think there's something there that like registers with people that are looking at it that way. You know what I mean? Or that there's a very like that sincerity is really, it really means a lot, you know. I think that's the key there.
Yeah, man. I see. I think the conversations that Sway and I have had, they I feel that the parts of himself that he maybe sees in me as we both relate to the industry and that we're in and the culture that we're in. And it's so informative for me to see how he relates to it.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause he's a human being, you know, like he's an incredible human being, but you know, he's a guy
Right.
like us, you
Right.
know?
Right.
And so even the conversations I have with him off air, things that frustrate him or realizing, you know, we may think of him in such esteem, but truthfully, he's underappreciated in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
ways by the culture or by definitely by the mainstream, you know, culture. Um, or even, and these aren't all things that he said to me, but just things that I've observed also potentially of like wondering what it's like to be him, of the guy that everyone comes to see to promote things, but I wonder how many of those, you know, how he navigates those relationships feels very similar to me in certain ways to like
Mm.
how I'm trying to navigate relationships with other artists or people and stuff like that. And but mostly just as a man who is trying to be a person of integrity
Right.
and cares so deeply about the culture and knows it inside and out,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, having to just, you said something earlier about loving it and all the artists within it unconditionally,
Mm-hmm.
and that really resonated with me because that's what he
Yeah.
does, and he's not naive about anything.
No.
You know, there's no naivete there to like to assist him in that unconditional love,
Right.
but he's come out the other side and figured out how to do it, and so I look up to him in that way, of relating to that sometimes, and it's validating for me to hear what his frustrations are, because it's like, well, shit, man, if I could be a man of influence anywhere close to like a Sway,
Yeah.
then maybe some of these frustrations just come with the territory, man. That's all good. Maybe I am still on the right track, you know?
Yeah, you just think about, speaking of Sway moments, like obviously the one that he had with Kanye, and you don't have the answer, Sway, and all that kind of stuff. To me, the really beautiful and noteworthy part of that is not Kanye yelling at him, but it's more so him being the only person that can just be like, remind him that like, hey, we're both human beings, man. Like you don't have to talk to me like this. Like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you treating a person like this right now? Like, I love you. You know what I mean? When he said that, like, I love you, man. Like, you know what I mean? We could turn the mics off and the cameras off, but like, we're at the end of the day, we're two people sitting here. Like, just the humanizing element
Yeah.
of that. You know what I mean? And that approach in general. And then also like the women on his show are not just there to be cute and, you
Yes.
know what I mean, and set him up to say stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like the fact that like, man, Heather B is serious, man. Heather B's pedigree is serious.
Yeah.
Like Heather B is from Boogie Down Productions. You know what I mean? And I see the comments that people make under Tracy's stuff, but Same thing with Tracy. Like, man, people might treat her like, yeah, you're here to be, attractive. It's like, okay, turn this mic on and see what my questions are.
Yeah, I love Tracy,
You know what I'm
man.
saying?
Yeah, I love
Like, see
Tracy.
see the way that I communicate with people. See the way that I talk to people.
Yeah, it always feels like family when I go there, man. Like that's the one
Hmm.
place. And for me, like to bring it around to kind of where we started, is like, that's always been so valuable for me because I've come up into that place that is really like that room when Sway and those folks are in it is like a epicenter, a mecca of hip hop culture and hip hop media or whatever you want to call it. And they've made me a member of that family in there. When I come through, I feel that way, and that's been so special to me because that's like,
Yeah.
that's just been really special and validating to me. And it's been about the music from day one. The first time that I went up in there for my album on my solo shit by myself, it was like I came. He was like, Sway just comes up to me before the starts rolling. He's like, "Yo, your album is very good,
Mm.
man." He's like, "Yo, and he's like talking to me about it, and he's like talking about the intro and how it's the live instrumentation, and I'm like, "Is this for real?" Because he had really listened to it and we had really engaged with it, and you know, he's got 4 guests a day, and I'm just this new kid, and it was like he was really gave the time and attention, so I always appreciated that, man.
Man, there's a million things I can ask you about, and I feel like I'll never get tired of, you know what I'm saying, of talking to you, brother. But you've been so generous with your time, and yeah, it just really means a lot, man. And I really, you're somebody that genuinely inspires me. Musically, and the way that you're carrying yourself, and like you genuinely make me want to, make music and get out here and still be active. You know what I'm saying? So, man, I appreciate you greatly.
Man, I can't begin to tell you what that means to me, man, and I really, really appreciate it. And yeah, man, as soon as you were like, "Yo, you want to get on this," I was honored to be able to spend this time with you, and definitely without question was excited to do it. So, thank you, man, and I appreciate that you're tapped in, and someone, a man of your pedigree, is fuck with me. And yeah, man, I hope we keep in touch, man. Definitely. I got a lot of I'm excited to hear the new stuff that you got as well, and just always reciprocal on this side, man.
I
Nah,
appreciate you, brother.
all right, man. You too. Take care, man. Good to talk to you.
Peace, peace. Special thanks to my dear brother Marlon Craft for being so generous with himself, with his time, with his story, with his wisdom, just opening up and giving it all in such a sincere way as he always does. Yeah, he's somebody I'm really, really grateful for and grateful to. It's important to be able to see ourselves in the people that come after us, and to think like, maybe I was one of the influences, and maybe something that we did may have helped him, because he has definitely helped us. He definitely makes me feel inspired. He makes me want to rap, makes me want to make music, makes me want to go on tour, and that's really, really very, very special. So special thanks to Marlon Craft. Shout out to our sponsors, BetterHelp and the Zakat Foundation. Um, Travelers Podcast. Yeah, go to brotherali.com and check out everything there. But check out that caravan and check out the vault. And if you're able to get in on that upper level, on that upper tier, I mean, we really do community there. We just got off of a Zoom call over the weekend that lasted for several hours. I played the new music that I'm working on for the folks in that group. And it's a very real experience where we share life together. I am tremendously grateful for everybody that's involved in this podcast. Shout to Darian Washington and Last Word and Amna Mirza. And yeah, shout to all of the amazing people, especially my friends that listen to this podcast and give me feedback. because you're all absolutely part of it. And shout out to Mark from Medina Hip Hop who did the logo. Shout out to my man Ant who did the music. That's, of course, the beat for the song called The Travelers on our 2009 album called Us. And yeah, we'll be back with you next week, inshallah. We love you. We appreciate you. Please stay safe. Please stay sane. Please stay alive. That's something that people post online from time to time, and it's good to hear. The world would not be the same without you. If you're feeling like your life doesn't mean much, you should know that there's at least one person in this world, and probably many people, that would be absolutely devastated if you were to call it quits on this life. And so it's a bit of an odd turn, but that's what we do. Like, we talk about real life and real issues here. We know a lot of people that are struggling with the idea of whether or not they want to keep going. So this is just one voice, my voice, saying to you, keep on going, keep on pushing, keep on. It's a nightmare. It really is. You're not crazy. Nothing's wrong with you. You're not crazy. The world is crazy. But you make it through another day, and then get up tomorrow and make it through another day, and just keep on making through another day, another day, another day, because we want you here. Much love. We'll see you next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.